Hi, Phyllis. My name is Lewis, and I have something to tell you. My girlfriend got pregnant. There's nothing unusual about that, right? But the thing is, I'm 16 years old, so hooray? I don't remember when I met Jasmine, because I was just a baby. Her parents were our neighbors, so, as my mother used to say, Jasmine and I have known each other since we were in diapers. We grew up side by side. When we were kids, we literally did everything together. So until 16, we were the best of friends. But then I ruined it. Not on purpose. I was just growing up and becoming a man, you know? So I told Jasmine that I wanted to be more than just friends with her. And of course, she said those standard words, that she didn't want to ruin our friendship and all that kind of stuff that girls usually say. So I got trapped in the friend zone. Or more precisely, we created this friend zone 16 years ago. It's okay, I could have handled that. I would have suffered a little and my feelings would have gone away. But then I found out that she had started dating a guy from school. Mike. Freaking Mike from drama class. He looks more like a peacock than a man. And she would rather date him than me? Come on! Everyone knows that Mike has dated half the girls at school. How did Jasmine even agree to go on a date with him? I was so mad. I tried to tell her that he was just going to use her, but she wouldn't listen. And after a few months passed, it happened. I saw her near the school crying. You don't have to be a detective to figure out what happened. So I went up to her and hugged her without saying a word. I took her home, and she told me everything. As I expected, Mike had broken up with her. To be honest, I had to bite my lip not to say, "I told you so." And thank God I didn't say that. She seemed so grateful for my compassion that when we said goodbye, she looked directly in my eyes and kissed me. Oh, boy. I had dreamt about this moment, and now it was happening. That's how we started dating. These were the happiest moments of my life. We spent our days and nights together, and I didn't want to leave her, even for a second. For 3 weeks, I just glowed with happiness. Until one morning, someone knocked on my door. Jasmine and her parents were standing in the doorway. They came into the house and shocked us with some news. Jasmine was pregnant! Wow, I just froze. I sat in a daze, and I couldn't even hear everything that our parents were saying at that moment. All I could do was look Jasmine in the eyes and see her empathy. She could barely hold back her tears. But at some point, she stood up and interrupted everyone. She said, "I'm going to keep the baby." Our parents were silent for a second. Then I got up and said, "I'm old enough to take responsibility, and I promise to do everything I can to take care of Jasmine and the baby." Of course, these words meant nothing to them. In their eyes, I was just a 16-year-old boy who did something bad. After that, we had a lot of conversations and discussions, but the decision was final. I would become a father. I understood that most of all, we needed money, so I started looking for work. Unfortunately, people at my age can only earn money by delivering pizza or working at a fast food restaurant. But I needed a job, so I worked as a courier until the evenings and then worked the fryer at McDonald's. Yes, it was very hard, but in my head there was always one thought that pushed me forward. Soon I'll have a child. And it gave me the strength to work 24/7. Jasmine was also having a hard time. She was pregnant at 16, so everyone around was judging her, even her parents. They never fully accepted that we were having a baby and mostly just blamed her for the mistake. On the other hand, my parents supported us and even told me that Jasmine and I could live with them and turn one of the rooms into a nursery. This support was more than necessary, and I was very grateful to my mom and dad. Things were improving. I'd gotten accustomed to hard work, and I started to make some time to spend with Jasmine. But she was so upset all the time. Something was worrying her more than her parents, and she didn't want to talk about it. I figured out a way I could cheer her up. I was able to dedicate a few hours a week to set up the nursery. I painted the walls, put down soft carpet, put together a crib, and bought a lot of toys. Oh, I even painted different animals on the walls. Yeah, I know, they're drawn badly, okay? But I put my heart into it, so the room looked pretty good. I really wanted to surprise Jasmine, So I took the day off, and we spent the whole day together. We went for a walk, watched a movie, and had a romantic dinner. Finally, she cheered up a little and got distracted from whatever was making her sad. And now, it was time for the main surprise. We went to my house. I closed her eyes with my hands and led her into the baby's room. When we went in, I said, "Our baby will grow up here." And I opened her eyes. She looked at the room for a minute and then began to cry. At first, I thought it was tears of happiness, but no. She started apologizing to me. I was so confused. I didn't know what was going on. And then she finally confessed. I wasn't the baby's father. She said that Mike dumped her because she told him that she was pregnant, and then we almost immediately started dating. She thought that she could hide it, but her conscience was eating her up. At that moment, my world fell apart. All my hard work, all those fights with my parents, were Mike's fault. I felt used. She's carrying his baby, and I'm working like crazy to provide its future. For about a week, I was completely out of my mind. I was just lying in bed, thinking about our relationship and the baby. I was thinking about what to do next. Some of my thoughts were really dark. I was still depressed, but something unexpected happened. In the middle of the night, someone knocked loudly on our door. It was Jasmine's parents. They looked terrified and shouted that Jasmine was in labor. She needed to be rushed to the hospital. We got in the car, and Dad drove us to the hospital. We drove as fast as possible, breaking all the possible rules. At the hospital, Jasmine was put in a bed and taken away from us. The problem is that she was only in her 8th month of pregnancy, so her life and the life of the child was in danger. A few hours later, I was pacing the halls, trying to get all the awful thoughts out of my head. I just kept telling myself that she'll be fine, the baby will be fine, everything will be fine. About 3 hours later, the doctor came to us and asked who the father of this baby was. Without a shadow of a doubt, I said that I was the father. Then the doctor sighed and said, "The baby is fine. He's absolutely healthy. Mom's fine too, but she needs to get some rest now." So the doctor told us to go home, go to sleep, and come back in the morning. But I couldn't sleep and kept thinking, thank God the baby's okay. In the morning, when Jasmine woke up, they let me into her room. I walked up to her, hugged her tight, and said, "It's okay. We're going to be fine." A few hours later, the nurse brought us the baby. At that moment, I just burst into tears of happiness. He was so small and so pink. I couldn't believe my eyes. It's like all the happiness in the world had been put into one little baby. I guess that's the parental instinct, because I felt like I would do anything to keep this baby safe. It didn't matter who his biological father was. This was our child and our family.
Hey, I'm Lily, and this story is about my disgusting classmate Pablo. He always hit on me, saying things like, "Nice booty, come over to my house and we can party, just the two of us." It didn't matter how many times I told him to stop. He just got worse. And no one dared to stop him because his dad was a powerful politician. You see, I live in Honduras, and our government is very corrupt. If you stood up to Pablo, he might tell his dad, and you could be beaten up, or worse. When I was 17, I suddenly developed a water allergy. The doctors didn't know why, but whenever water touched my skin, it burned like acid. I made an announcement to my class to tell them to be careful and not throw any water on me because I'd get badly hurt. But of course, Pablo didn't believe me. He laughed and sneered. "Lily's just looking for an excuse not to shower." Then he dipped his finger into the water bucket next to the blackboard and splashed water in my face. I screamed, desperately trying to wipe the water off my face, but it was too late. A small rash came up on my skin and it was very painful. Pablo still didn't believe me though. He said I was only pretending and I'd scratched my face on purpose. After class was over, another boy called Simon came to see if I was okay. "Pablo's a jerk," he said. Sorry I didn't stand up to him. Nobody deserves to be treated like that. Oh my God. I had a crush on Simon for years, and now he was talking to me? He was cute, caring, and always made me laugh. But nothing was going to happen with him because he already had a girlfriend. 2 weeks later, our class took a trip to the beach. I couldn't go into the water because of my allergy, so I changed into my bikini and played volleyball with some of my friends. I just scored a point when Pablo came over. "How are you?" he asked. I said fine. I really didn't want to talk to him after what he did in class. But then he said, "I still think you're lying about your water allergy, so..." He pulled a water pistol from behind his back and squirted water right at my chest. Within seconds, my skin turned red and I wanted to scream, but I couldn't because I was struggling to breathe. The next thing I remember is waking up in a hospital. My mom was there and she told me I'd almost died. She stayed with me as long as she could, but she still had to work to support our family, so eventually she had to go. Guess who came into my room after she'd gone? Yep, Pablo. I wanted to scream at him to go away, but I was too weak, so I just glared at him. He said, "I'm sorry, Lily. I really thought you were joking when you said you were allergic to water. I already told your mom that my dad will pay your hospital bills, and if there's anything I can do for you, let me know." That creep. Did he really think he could just say sorry and let his dad buy his way out of trouble? No way. I pressed the buzzer for the nurse and told her to throw Pablo out. But a couple hours later, Pablo snuck back into my room wearing a cheesy mustache. He brought roses and apologized over and over. I gotta admit, it was kinda cute to see how hard he was trying to say sorry. I let him stay and we ended up watching La La Land on his laptop. I know it sounds stupid, but I started to think he wasn't that bad. When the movie was over, Pablo didn't go home. Instead, he slept on the floor next to my bed. He said he wanted to be near me in case something happened. He was like my shadow until the doctor said I could go home. As we walked out of the hospital together, he kissed me. And I kissed him back. Yes, he'd been a jerk. But people can change, right? Our first weeks dating were awesome. We'd hang out at his house, and it was amazing. He had a tennis court, indoor swimming pool, even a private cinema. But slowly, his behavior changed. He started to tell me what clothes to wear and who I could be friends with. Sometimes, he'd order me to come to his house just to send me away again 25 minutes later. I wasn't going to let him treat me like that. But when I told him I didn't feel respected, he laughed and said, "I don't care how you feel. I promised my dad we'd get married, and he gets mad when people break their promises. You don't want to see my dad when he's mad." I asked, "Don't you want to marry a normal girl who isn't allergic to water? You're always complaining that I smell bad because I can't take showers and have to use powder to clean myself." But he said, "You're the girl I want. If I can't have you, no one else will." So I stayed with him. I was afraid of what his father would do if I tried to break up with him. Pablo's behavior got worse, though. He started cheating on me, and he didn't care that I knew. But then I started going to university, and everything changed. Guess who I met in the library? Simon. When he saw me reading a book, he came over to say hi. His smile was cuter than ever, and all my feelings for him came flooding back. I asked if he was still with his girlfriend, and he said, "No, we broke up some time ago." Wow, it felt like this was fate. We sat together and talked for hours. We could have stayed there all night. But I got a text from Pablo demanding I go to see him. I hated saying goodbye to Simon. And while I was with Pablo, I couldn't stop thinking about my high school crush. When Simon and I met again at a coffee shop, I confessed that I'd loved him for years, but was too scared to leave Pablo. Without saying a word, Simon pulled me to him and kissed me. I never wanted that kiss to end, but I pushed him away saying, "You'll be dead if Pablo finds out." "I don't care," Simon replied, and kissed me again. We started dating in secret, and for a few months, I thought we'd get away with it. But one night Pablo asked me, "I hear you're close friends with Simon from school." I gasped. "What? No! He's just one of my classmates. I hardly know him." Pablo said, "Carlos told me he saw you and him kissing." I protested. "Carlos is lying." But I could tell Pablo didn't believe me. "You know what I have to do now, and it's all your fault," Pablo said. I started crying, begging him to leave Simon alone. But Pablo pushed me away and ordered 2 of his dad's security guards to go with him. After they left, I rang Simon and told him to leave town or Pablo would come for him. Simon persuaded me to go with him, so we agreed to meet up at the city bus station. Before I left, I stole 2 small Inca statues from Pablo's house. I knew they were made of pure gold, so I'd hoped they'd help me and Simon to start a new life. When we met at the bus station, we fell into each other's arms, kissing passionately. I was so happy to see Simon alive. We took the next bus to Mexico. The whole journey, I worried about Pablo coming after us. But we arrived safely. It took a while, but we found someone willing to sell the statues for us, and got way more for them than I expected. We were able to buy ourselves a little house. It was a world apart from Pablo's, but it was ours, and we were happy there. Although we weren't trying, I soon fell pregnant and gave birth to our son, Frank. Simon went out to work while I looked after the baby. Everything was perfect. But I should have known it was too good to last. One night, masked men broke into our house and took me with them, leaving Simon and Frank behind. They took me to a small private airstrip, and that's when I realized Pablo had tracked me down. I cried the whole flight back to Honduras, terrified that something bad had happened to Simon and Frank. When we landed, as I left the plane, I saw Pablo standing there with a big grin on his face. He came up to me and said, "How are you, sweetheart?" He tried to hug me, but I pushed him away screaming, "What have you done to Simon and my baby?" Instead of answering, he just smiled and told me to get into his car. I had no choice, so I did what I was told. When we arrived at his house, I immediately felt like a prisoner. Pablo said, "Now that we're finally reunited, I'm gonna marry you as soon as possible. Let's say tomorrow. But before you think of saying no, remember, I know where your mom lives." I was devastated. My son and boyfriend were gone, and now I had to marry Pablo? As a sick joke, he invited my mom to our wedding. She was so happy for me that I couldn't tell her the truth. She loved the idea of me marrying into money, because we'd always been poor. She had no idea how miserable I was. The ceremony was weird. It was only me, Pablo, the pastor, and my mom. At the altar, I asked him, "Why me? Why not some other girl?" And he replied, "The more you despise me, the more I want you." That was the beginning of my new life. I was a prisoner in a gilded cage, but it wasn't as bad as I had imagined it. I was allowed to go out sometimes as long as one of Pablo's bodyguards was with me. I'd drive in armored luxury SUVs to go shopping, but it felt wrong spending Pablo's money. My country is so poor, and I hated living in luxury while there were kids begging on the streets. Of course, I also never forgot Simon and Frank. I promised myself I'd run away and find out what happened to them, to see if they were still alive. But then the worst thing happened. Pablo got me pregnant. I was trapped. There was no way I'd leave my baby with Pablo. But if I took him with me, Pablo would hunt me down again. When I gave birth to my second son, Lucas, Pablo's dad started spending a lot of time with me and Lucas. As I got to know him, he seemed like a decent man, so I told him how Pablo was treating me. His reaction stunned me. He said, "My son's an idiot. He should know better than to treat a woman that way. I promise you, if you raise my grandson well so he's nothing like his father, I'll make sure he gets my full inheritance." Then he told Pablo never to lay a hand on me again. I was part of the family and deserved respect. Pablo's dad gave me a house and the baby, as well as a monthly allowance. It's not a bad life, and I love Lucas dearly. But I can't forget Simon and Frank. I just hope I see them again one day.